The neon lights of Varric night market cast harsh shadows across Jace's gaunt face. His stomach growled as he clutched the small package of synthetic protein, his only meal for the day. Around him, the market buzzed with the cacophony of 1,000 alien tongues, the air thick with exotic spices, and the metallic tang of spacecraft fuel. Humans were rare in this corner of the galaxy, and rarer still in the undercity markets of Varric 9, where the dregs of society gathered to scratch out meager livings beneath the towering crystal spires of the wealthy. "Move aside, Earthling," a Draconid merchant hissed, shoving Jace roughly. "Your kind blocks my paying customers." Jace stumbled, but didn't protest. As one of the few humans in this sector, he'd grown accustomed to such treatment. Earth was a distant memory for the galaxy, a birthplace of humanity. Yes, but now just another conquered world among hundreds in the Veltra Empire. Its people were viewed as primitive good, only for the most menial labor. Clutching his food package tighter, Jace made his way through the crowded marketplace toward the small storage unit he called home. The smell of roasting meat and brewing stimulants made his mouth water, but he had spent his last credits on this simple meal. 22 standard cycles on this planet, and still, he was just scraping by. The division between rich and poor on Varric 9 wasn't subtle. Above the crystal towers of the elite pierced the perpetual night sky, gleaming with wealth that trickled down only as waste and runoff. Below, in the undercity, millions fought for scraps beneath artificial lights designed to mimic daylight, but falling woefully short, giving everything a sickly, greenish tint. As Jace turned down a narrow alley that served as a shortcut to his sector, he noticed a hunched figure pressed against the wall. The being wore tattered robes, a deep hood obscuring their features entirely. A beggar, not uncommon in these parts, but this one seemed different. The cloth covering them was of a material Jace couldn't quite place, dirty and torn yet, with a subtle shimmer that spoke of better days. 3 Imperial guards stood nearby, their armored uniforms gleaming even in the dim light. They were laughing, taking turns kicking small debris toward the huddled figure. "Look at this one," the tallest guard snickered. "Probably another refugee from the Outer Rim Purge. They're getting more pathetic by the day." "Maybe it's an ascendant fallen from grace," another suggested, referring to the aristocratic class that ruled alongside the imperial family. "Wouldn't that be something?" The third guard produced a small, hovering drone. "Let's see what's under that hood." Something inside Jace stirred a long-buried sense of injustice that he usually suppressed for survival's sake. Before he could think better of it, he found himself stepping forward. "Leave them alone," he said, his voice steadier than he felt. The guards turned, clearly amused at the interruption. Their helmets concealed their faces, but their posture conveyed contempt. "The Earthling speaks," the tall one said. "And what will you do if we don't primate?" Jace swallowed hard. "Nothing. But you've had your fun. Don't you have actual criminals to catch?" The guards exchanged glances. Then the leader stepped toward Jace, looming over him. "Perhaps we do. Interfering with Imperial officers could be considered criminal activity." Jace held his ground, though his heart raced. He glanced at the huddled figure, catching a glimpse of what might have been eyes, glinting from beneath the hood, watching. "I'm just heading home," Jace said, trying to defuse the situation. "And I thought maybe this person could use some food." He held out his package of synthetic protein, the meal he'd been looking forward to all day. The guards laughed again, harder this time. "Look at this Earthling charity! How touching!" The leader snatched the package from Jace's hand. "I'll save you the trouble." With a casual flick of his wrist, he tossed the food package into a nearby waste incinerator. Jace watched his dinner disappear in a flash of blue flame. "Consider that your tax payment to the Empire this cycle," the guard said. "Now move along before we decide to collect more." Jace clenched his fists, but remained silent. Fighting Imperial guards was suicide. He'd seen others try, none had survived to tell the tale. As the guards finally lost interest and moved on, Jace approached the huddled figure. Up close, he could see the robes were indeed unusual beneath the grime, and tears, The fabric seemed to shift colors slightly, like oil on water. "Sorry about that," he said softly. "And sorry about the food I would have shared." The figure remained motionless for a moment. Then a hand emerged from the folds of the robe. The skin was pale blue with a subtle pattern of raised ridges, centaurian perhaps, or one of the many subspecies from that sector. The hand moved toward Jace and he resisted the urge to step back. The fingers were delicate despite their alien appearance, and as they touched his wrist, Jace felt a strange warmth spread up his arm. He looked down in alarm to see a faint glow spread beneath his skin, tracing the path of his veins for just a moment before fading. "What did you—" he began, but the hooded figure had already withdrawn their hand and was rising to their feet. "Thank you," came a whispered voice, feminine and melodic despite its weakness. "Remember this moment." Before Jace could respond, the figure slipped away into the shadowy labyrinth of the Undercity, moving with a grace that seemed at odds with their apparent condition. Jace stared after them, rubbing his wrist where the strange warmth had spread. There was no mark, no lingering sensation yet. Somehow he felt changed. Hunger forgotten, he made his way home, the encounter replaying in his mind. That night, Jace dreamed of a crystal throne, and a woman in flowing robes, her face always just beyond his vision. Around her stars swirled, and galaxies bloomed like flowers. She reached out to him, and that same warmth spread through his body. "Find me," she whispered. "The thread of light connects us now." He woke with a start, his sparse room illuminated by an eerie glow. It was coming from his wrist, the same spot the beggar had touched. A thin line of light, no thicker than a thread, extended from his skin, stretching across the room and through the wall, pointing somewhere into the city beyond. Jace stared at it in wonder and confusion. The light didn't hurt. In fact, it gave off no heat at all. He tried to touch it, but his fingers passed through, as if it were just an illusion. Yet, he could see it clearly, a golden thread tethering him to something. Or someone. Morning came, though, in the Undercity. The only indication was the slight brightening of the artificial lights, and the increased bustle in the corridors outside. Jace hadn't slept again after discovering the thread of light. He'd wrapped a cloth around his wrist, but the glow seeped through any covering. As he made his way to his workstation, a small repair shop where he fixed the discarded tech of the upper city, he noticed increased Imperial presence. Guards were stopping citizens examining identification chips and questioning them aggressively. "What's happening?" Jace asked an old Trickian vendor setting up a food cart. The Trickian's eye stalks swiveled nervously. "They say a fugitive is hiding in the Undercity. Someone important." "A criminal?" "No," the Trickian whispered, leaning closer. "Worse, a revolutionary." Before Jace could ask more, a squad of guards approached. Their leader pointed directly at him. "You, Earthling, we have questions." Jace froze, his mind racing. Had they somehow connected him to the beggar? Was helping someone a crime now? "I'm just heading to work," he said, trying to keep his voice steady. "Your work can wait." The guard grabbed his arm, the same arm with the glowing thread, though the cloth still covered it. "You were seen last night speaking with a person of interest." Jace's heart hammered in his chest. "I spoke to a beggar, that's all." "That's for intelligence to determine." As the guard began to drag him toward a waiting transport, the thread of light beneath Jace's bandage pulsed brightly. At the same moment, a deafening explosion rocked the marketplace. Debris rained down as smoke filled the air. In the confusion, Jace felt himself pulled backward away from the guards and into a narrow service passage he hadn't noticed before. A strong hand gripped his shoulder, and he turned to find himself face to face with a towering figure in worn combat armor. "Don't struggle," the stranger growled. "I'm getting you out of here." "Who are you?" Jace demanded, trying to pull away. "Name's Tarn. I serve the true Empire." The armored figure pushed Jace deeper into the passage. "And that mark on your wrist means you're important." "How do you know about—" "No time. Move now, questions later." They navigated a maze of maintenance tunnels descending ever deeper beneath the city. The further they went, the older the infrastructure became. Eventually, they emerged into a vast chamber that appeared to be an abandoned transit station, its once grand architecture now crumbling and covered in bioluminescent fungi that cast an ethereal blue glow. Dozens of people were gathered there, humans and aliens alike, all with the determined look of those who had nothing left to lose. "Welcome to the Remnant," Tarn said, his voice echoing in the cavernous space. "The what?" Jace asked, still trying to process his sudden change in circumstances. "The last loyal subjects of the true Empress." Tarn removed his helmet, revealing a weathered face, marked with ritual scars, the sign of a royal bodyguard. "We've been waiting a long time for that mark to appear on someone." Jace unwrapped his wrist. The thread of light was stronger now, pulsing with an inner rhythm like a heartbeat. It stretched away from him, through the far wall of the chamber. "What is this thing? What does it mean?" Tarn's expression softened. "It means you've been chosen. The beggar you helped wasn't just any refugee. That was Princess Aris Veltra, rightful heir to the imperial throne." Jace stared in disbelief. "The princess? But she's been dead for years. Everyone knows the royal family was killed in the coup." "Not killed, betrayed," came a new voice. The crowd parted, and through them walked a figure in clean but simple attire, a far cry from the filthy robes of the beggar. But Jace recognized the voice immediately. It was her. She lowered her hood and a collective gasp rippled through the chamber. Her face was striking high cheekbones and almond-shaped eyes, set in blue-tinted skin, covered with intricate patterns that seemed to shift in the light. A circlet of dull metal sat upon her brow, embedded with stones that no longer glowed. "Princess Aris," Tarn said, dropping to one knee. The others followed suit. Jace remained standing, too shocked to remember protocol. Aris approached him, her eyes fixed on the thread of light emanating from his wrist. "You see it too?" Jace asked quietly. "I created it," she replied, "though I did not expect it to manifest so strongly. You must have a purer heart than most." "I don't understand any of this," Jace admitted. Aris nodded. "Few would. What you need to know is that 15 years ago, General Koresh, my father's most trusted advisor and head of the Imperial Guard, betrayed us. He orchestrated an attack that was blamed on terrorists. My father and mother were killed." Her voice faltered briefly. "I escaped only because one loyal guard sacrificed himself to get me to safety." Tarn, Jace guessed. "No." Aris smiled sadly. "Tarn found me years later. He was stationed off-world during the coup." Tarn stepped forward. "When I returned and saw what Koresh had done, installing himself as regent until the crisis was resolved, I knew I had to find the princess. It took 7 years. And another 8 to build our resistance," Aris continued. "All while the false emperor dismantled my father's work, turning the empire from a beacon of justice into an engine of oppression." Jace looked around at the gathered rebels. "And what does this have to do with me, with this?" He held up his glowing wrist. "The royal bloodline of Veltra carries genetic markers that respond to certain stimuli," Aris explained. "When I touched you, I was testing your compatibility." "Compatibility for what?" "For the throne of crystal," Tarn interjected. "Only those chosen by the bloodline can approach it. Not even the princess herself can claim it without a chosen one to complete the circuit. And that's me." Jace couldn't keep the disbelief from his voice. "A random earthling from the Undercity." Aris smiled, and for a moment, Jace glimpsed the regal presence beneath her simple appearance. "There is nothing random in this galaxy, Jace. The thread of light is a bond, ancient technology fused with what some call magic. It will lead you to the true throne, hidden since the coup." "This is insane," Jace muttered, though the evidence glowed brightly on his wrist. A sudden commotion near one of the tunnel entrances interrupted them. A rebel scout burst into the chamber, breathing hard. "Imperial forces. They're sweeping the lower levels with bioscanners. They must be tracking the energy signature." Tarn cursed. "We need to move, now." He turned to Jace. "The thread is our guide. We follow you." "Me, I don't even know where it leads." "That's the point," Aris said, pulling her hood back up. "No one does. The throne chamber shifts its location to protect itself. Only the thread can guide us there. The distant sound of boots and energy weapons powering up echoed through the tunnels. Jace looked at the thread of light stretching from his wrist, then at the expectant faces around him. All his life he'd been pushed aside, looked down upon, treated as less than nothing because of his human heritage. Now, suddenly, he was being asked to lead. "Fine," he said, squaring his shoulders. "But if we're going to do this, we do it my way." They moved through ancient maintenance tunnels that predated the current city remnants of the original colony that had been built over as Varric 9 grew. The thread of light pulled Jace forward, sometimes requiring them to break through walls or squeeze through narrow passages that seemed impossible to navigate. Hours passed and the sounds of pursuit grew distant. They had descended so far beneath the city that they had reached natural caverns, something Jace hadn't believed existed on this overdeveloped world. "We're beyond the city limits now," Tarn said, studying a crude map projected from his armor. "Into the wilderness zone." "There's wilderness on Varric 9, Jace asked, surprised. Oris nodded. "The Empire maintains certain areas for ecological study, though now they're more like prisons for political dissidents." As they continued, the thread led them to what appeared to be a solid rock wall. When Jace approached, however, the stone rippled like water, responding to the light emanating from his wrist. "The first gate," Eris whispered with reverence. "It's been generations since anyone has seen it." Jace reached out hesitantly, and his hand passed through the seemingly solid rock. Taking a deep breath, he stepped forward, passing entirely through the barrier. On the other side was a vast chamber that defied the natural geography of the planet. The ceiling soared hundreds of meters above, covered in crystalline formations that emitted a soft, pulsing light. The floor was polished stone inlaid with metallic patterns that seemed to flow and shift beneath their feet. At the center stood an archway of intertwined metal and crystal, humming with energy. "The threshold of truth," Oris said, her voice hushed. "The first of 3 trials before the throne." "Trials?" Jace asked, suddenly apprehensive. "No one mentioned trials." Tarn shrugged. "The throne doesn't give itself to just anyone. It must test both the chosen and the claimant." Before Jace could protest further, the archway flared to life, projecting a field of energy that displayed shifting images, scenes from his life, both the proud moments and the shameful ones. His childhood on Earth, the day his family was relocated to serve the Empire, his first experience with discrimination, the many times he'd walked past suffering because he was afraid to get involved. And finally, the moment he stood up to the guards to help a beggar expecting nothing in return. The images focused on that moment, replaying it from multiple angles, as if the arch were studying his intentions. A deep, resonant voice filled the chamber. "Approach Jace of Earth." Jace glanced at Eris, who nodded encouragingly. Taking a deep breath, he walked toward the archway. As he stepped through, pain lanced through his body, not physical, but emotional. Every regret, every failure, every moment of weakness crashed over him in a wave that brought him to his knees. Tears streamed down his face as he relived each moment. "Many are kind when it costs them nothing," the voice intoned. "Few maintain their compassion when threatened. Fewer still act with kindness, knowing they will suffer for it." The pain subsided, replaced by a warm glow that started in his chest and spread outward. "Rise, chosen one. You have passed the test of character." Jace stood shakily, feeling both drained and somehow renewed. The thread of light from his wrist pulsed more strongly now, leading deeper into the chamber toward another doorway. "What was that?" he asked, his voice hoarse. "The throne must know your heart," Oris explained, coming to stand beside him. "Only one whose compassion is genuine can help restore the Empire." "And if I had failed?" Tarn's expression was grim. "Then we would have needed to find another chosen. The test is not survivable if failed." Jace paled. "You might have mentioned that earlier." "Would it have changed your decision to help?" Eris asked quietly. After a moment, Jace shook his head. "No, but I like to know the stakes." The stakes, Tarn said gravely, are the future of the entire galaxy. As they moved toward the next doorway, Jace noticed the thread of light was now connecting directly to Eris as well. A matching glow emanated from her palm, sending a thread that intertwined with his own. The second chamber was smaller, but no less impressive. Its walls were lined with mirrors that reflected not their physical forms, but something deeper, their fears, their hopes, their true selves. "The Chamber of Reflection," Eris whispered. "It will show us as we truly are." In the mirrors, Jace saw himself not as the undercity scrapper, but as something more standing tall, confident, a leader. It was unsettling to see such potential reflected back at him. Eris's reflection was even more striking. Gone was the simple attire replaced by resplendent royal garments. A crown of crystal and light adorned her head, and her eyes blazed with power and wisdom. At the center of this chamber stood a pedestal bearing a small crystal orb. "The Orb of Dedication," Eris explained. "It requires an offering." "What kind of offering?" Jace asked suspiciously. "A truth you've never spoken aloud," Tarn said. "Your deepest fear or most closely guarded secret." Jace approached the pedestal, cautiously. As he stood before it, the orb began to glow, pulsing in rhythm with the thread of light on his wrist. "Speak," commanded the same resonant voice from before. Jace hesitated, then closed his eyes. "I'm afraid," he admitted, his voice barely above a whisper. "Not just of the Empire or of failing this quest. I'm afraid that no matter what I do, I'll never be good enough. That being human makes me less in this galaxy. That I'll always be overlooked, pushed aside, forgotten." The orb's glow intensified. "I pretend it doesn't bother me," Jace continued, the words flowing more freely now. "I act like I don't care what others think. But the truth is, I dream of proving them all wrong. Of showing the entire Empire that humans aren't lesser beings. That I deserve respect." The orb flared blindingly bright, then settled into a steady glow that matched the thread of light. "Truth freely given is power claimed," the voice announced. "Past chosen one." Eris stepped forward next, placing her hand above the orb. "I abandoned my people," she said, her voice thick with emotion. "When I escaped, I could have revealed myself, rallied support. Instead, I hid. For years, I convinced myself it was strategic, that I needed time to build strength to find allies. But the truth was simpler. I was afraid." A tear traced down her cheek. "I watched from the shadows as Koresh dismantled my father's legacy, as he turned the Empire cruel. I told myself there was nothing I could do alone. But while I waited for the perfect moment, millions suffered." The orb pulsed with a deep blue light. "Even now, part of me fears I'm not worthy to rule, that I've forfeited that right through inaction. That perhaps the Empire would be better with neither Koresh nor me at its head." The orb flared again, matching the thread that connected her to Jace. "Wisdom begins with acknowledging failure," the voice intoned. "Pass claimant." The far wall of the chamber dissolved, revealing a passage downward. "The final trial awaits," Tarn said, his voice solemn. "The test of resolve." As they descended the passage, the architecture changed, becoming more organic, as if the very stone had been grown rather than carved. The air grew warmer, and an odd scent like ozone and ancient dust filled their nostrils. The passage opened into a vast cavern, unlike any they had seen before. At its center stood an enormous beast part, reptile part, insect, with multiple limbs and a hide that seemed to shift and change like living metal. Its eyes glowed with the same light as the thread connecting Jace and Eris. "The Beast of Truth," Eris breathed. "I thought it was just a legend." "What does it do?" Jace asked, eyeing the creature warily. "It guards the final approach to the throne," Tarn explained. "It can only be passed, never defeated." "And how do we pass it?" "We must show absolute resolve," Eris said. "Unwavering commitment to our purpose." The beast let out a roar that shook the cavern, then spoke directly into their minds. "Approach and be judged, or retreat and be spared." Jace stepped forward, first the thread of light pulling him toward the creature. As he neared, the beast lowered its massive head until it was eye level with him. Its gaze pierced into Jace's very soul. Images flashed before him, not of the past this time, but possible futures. He saw himself elevated to power alongside Eris, respected and admired. He saw wealth beyond imagining planets at his command. He saw himself returning to Earth as a hero, the savior of humanity's reputation in the galaxy. Then, abruptly, the visions changed. He saw himself dying in agony as Imperial forces captured them. He saw Eris betrayed and executed. He saw Earth razed in retaliation for his actions. Every path has its price. The beast's voice thundered in his mind. Would you walk this road knowing you may lose everything, that your victory is not assured, that even in success, the burden may crush you? Jace swallowed hard. The temptation to turn back was nearly overwhelming, to return to his simple life, to forget he had ever met Eris or seen the thread of light. But that life had been hollow, a half-existence of fear and submission. Yes, he said firmly. I would rather die fighting for something meaningful than live cowering in the shadows. The beast's eyes flared, and it shifted its massive body aside, revealing a path forward. Pass chosen one, it rumbled. Your resolve is tested and found true. Eris approached next, and Jace could only imagine what visions the beast was showing her. Her face contorted with emotion, her fists clenched at her sides. When she finally spoke, her voice was steel. I have hidden long enough. Whatever the cost, my people deserve better than a tyrant's boot on their necks. I am Eris Veltra, daughter of Emperor Dorian, and Empress Lyra, rightful heir to the Crystal Throne. I will reclaim what is mine and restore justice to the galaxy. The beast inclined its head in what almost seemed like respect. Pass, claimant. Your resolve matches your birthright. With both judged worthy, the beast stepped fully aside, revealing a crystalline doorway pulsing with light. Beyond lies the throne chamber, the beast announced. Enter and claim your destiny. As they passed, the beast Tarn moved to follow, but an invisible barrier stopped him. Only the chosen and the claimant may proceed, the beast rumbled. The guardian must wait. Tarn nodded, understanding in his eyes. I will be here when you return, your highness. Jace and Eris passed through the crystalline doorway, together the threads of light connecting them pulsing in perfect synchronicity. The throne chamber was breathtaking, a perfect dome of crystal that seemed to contain the very cosmos within its walls. Stars wheeled overhead, galaxies spiraled in the distance, and at the center stood the crystal throne itself. It was not what Jace had expected. Rather than an ornate seat of power, it was a simple chair carved from a single piece of transparent crystal. Within, the crystal lights danced like captured stars. The true power of the Empire, Eris said softly. Not a weapon, not wealth, but knowledge. The throne connects to a network that spans the galaxy. The true purpose of the Empire was to share wisdom, to elevate all species toward enlightenment. Until Koresh corrupted it, Jace guessed. Aris nodded. He could not fully access its power without the royal bloodline, but he found ways to pervert its purpose, turning a system meant for sharing knowledge into one for surveillance and control. She approached the throne reverently, the thread of light between them, stretching but not breaking. Now we end his reign, she said. But I need your help, Jace. The throne requires both a ruler and a witness, someone who represents the people being served. Is that why I was chosen? Jace asked. To represent humanity. To represent all who have been marginalized and oppressed, Eris corrected. The thread chose you because your compassion was genuine despite your own suffering. She extended her hand. Will you stand with me as the first Earthling to witness an imperial ascension? You would forge a new bond between our peoples. Jace took her hand without hesitation. I will. Together, they approached the throne. As Eris seated herself, the thread of light between them intensified, expanding to envelope them both in a cocoon of golden radiance. By blood, and witnessed by compassion and resolve, I claim the crystal throne, Eris proclaimed. Let justice be restored to the Empire of Veltra. The throne flared to life, the stars within the crystal, burning like miniature suns. The chamber filled with light so intense that Jace had to shield his eyes. When the light subsided, Eris sat transformed upon the throne. Her simple clothes had been replaced by flowing robes of shimmering material, similar to what she had worn as a beggar, but now pristine and radiant. The dull circlet on her brow now gleamed with inner fire, its embedded stones glowing with power. Most striking of all was her expression, no longer that of a refugee or rebel, but of a ruler who had found her purpose. "It is done," she said, her voice carrying a new resonance. "The throne recognizes me." Jace knelt, instinctively overwhelmed by her transformation. "Rise, Jace of Earth," Eris commanded. "You kneel to no one from this day forward. You are the chosen witness, equal in the eyes of the true Empire." As he stood, Jace noticed his own clothes had changed as well, transformed into attire that combined elements of Earth fashion with imperial dignity. "What happens now?" he asked, still trying to process the magnitude of what they had accomplished. Eris smiled, a determined glint in her eye. "Now we reclaim my empire. The throne has reconnected to the imperial network. For the first time in 15 years, I can address all citizens directly." She gestured, and a control panel materialized beside the throne. "And I know exactly where to begin." Meanwhile, in the Imperial Palace at the heart of Varric Nida's capital spire, General Koresh, now styling himself Emperor Regent, was receiving troubling reports. "What do you mean you lost them?" he demanded, his voice dangerously quiet. "An undercity scrapper and a hooded beggar should not be difficult to track." The captain of the guard shifted uncomfortably. "They had help, my lord. Organized help. And they've gone beyond the city limits into the wilderness zone." Koresh's eyes narrowed. "You think this is connected to the remnant?" "It seems likely, my lord." Koresh dismissed the captain with a wave, then turned to the massive window overlooking the city. For 15 years he had ruled from the shadows, gradually consolidating power. Only a few more months, and he would declare himself emperor in truth, discarding the pretense of regency. Now this disturbance threatened everything. He activated a private communication channel. "Increase surveillance on all known remnant sympathizers. I want every bolt hole and hiding place raided within the hour. And deploy the elite guard to the wilderness zone." His second-in-command appeared as a hologram. "My lord, are you certain if word spreads that the elite guard has been deployed, it could cause panic?" "Let them panic," Koresh snarled. "Fear is a useful tool." As the hologram flickered out, all screens in the palace suddenly went dark. When they reactivated moments later, they showed not the imperial insignia, but an unfamiliar symbol, a thread of light wrapped around a crystal shard. Then, to Koresh's horror, a face appeared, one he had hoped never to see again. "Citizens of the Veltra Empire." Eris began, her voice clear and commanding. "I am Princess Eris Veltra, daughter of Emperor Dorian, and rightful heir to the Crystal Throne." Koresh lunged for the emergency controls, but they were unresponsive. The transmission was overriding all Imperial systems. "For 15 years you have lived under the rule of a usurper," Eris continued. "General Koresh, who murdered my family and claimed the throne through treachery." The image shifted, showing historical footage of Koresh standing beside the former emperor, swearing an oath of loyalty. Then it changed to surveillance footage Koresh thought had been destroyed, showing him ordering the assassination of the royal family. "This evidence comes from the Imperial Archive that Koresh thought he had purged," Eris explained. "But the Crystal Throne remembers all, and I have reclaimed my birthright." The image changed again, showing Eris seated upon the Crystal Throne, radiant with power. "I call upon all loyal citizens, all who remember the true purpose of our empire, to spread knowledge and justice throughout the galaxy, not fear and oppression. Stand with me now. The time for hiding is over." As the transmission continued, Koresh's rage built to a crescendo. He drew his ceremonial blade and slashed at the nearest screen, but it did no good. The transmission played on every device in the palace, throughout the city, across the entire planet. Across the empire, the response was immediate and overwhelming. Citizens who had lived in fear under Koresh's rule took to the streets. Imperial troops, many of whom had served reluctantly, laid down their weapons or turned on their commanders. On Varric 9, the Undercity erupted in celebration, as the downtrodden masses realized their oppression might finally end. In the upper spires, the elites who had flourished under Koresh's corruption barricaded themselves in their homes. Back in the throne chamber, Jace watched in awe as Eris conducted the opening moves of this galactic revolution with the skill of a master strategist. "We need to move quickly," she said after ending the transmission. "Koresh will be desperate now, and a cornered tyrant is dangerous." "What's our next step?" Jace asked. Aris rose from the throne. "We return to the city. The throne has shown me that Koresh will attempt to flee, but first, he'll try to destroy evidence of his crimes." "Can't you just broadcast again, show everyone what he's doing?" The initial broadcast was a surprise. He'll have technicians working to block further transmissions. We need to be there in person. They returned to the outer chamber, where Tarn waited with news. The elite guard had been deployed to hunt them, and Imperial forces were conducting mass arrests throughout the Undercity. "Koresh is panicking," Eris observed. "Good. That means he'll make mistakes." They made their way back toward the city, through a network of ancient tunnels revealed by the throne's knowledge. Remnant fighters joined them along the way, bringing reports of uprising across the planet. "The people are with you, Your Highness," Tarn reported. "But Koresh has barricaded himself in the palace with his most loyal forces." "Then that's where we're heading," Eris declared. "Into the heart of enemy territory?" Jace questioned. "That's suicide." Aris smiled confidently. "Not with what the throne has shown me. There's a hidden passage known only to the royal family that leads directly to the palace's central core." As they neared the city limits, they encountered the first serious resistance, a squadron of elite guards blocking their path. "Surrender in the name of Emperor Koresh," their commander demanded. Aris stepped forward, her presence commanding, even without the throne beneath her. "I am your true empress. The choice you make now will echo through history." For a tense moment, no one moved. Then, to Jace's astonishment, the commander removed his helmet and knelt. "My family served the true empire for generations," he said. "My allegiance is to the Veltra bloodline, not to Koresh's corruption." One by one, the other guards followed suit, laying down their weapons. "Not all will be so easily swayed," Tarn warned as they continued on. "We don't need all," Eris replied. "Just enough to create doubt in Koresh's ranks." They reached the hidden entrance to the palace, a maintenance shaft that had been converted into a royal escape route generations ago, then deliberately removed from official records. As they ascended into the palace proper, the sounds of conflict echoed through the opulent corridors. Koresh's loyalists were fighting a losing battle against defecting troops and citizens who had stormed the lower levels. "We need to split up," Eris decided. "Koresh will be in one of two places, the throne room where he pretends to rule, or the broadcast center trying to counter my message." "I'll take the broadcast center," Jace volunteered. "If I can get in, I can transmit the truth to any parts of the Empire that haven't received it yet." Aris nodded. "Tarn, take half our forces with Jace. The rest come with me to the throne room." The thread of light connecting Jace and Eris stretched as they separated but did not break. The broadcast center was heavily guarded, but most of the defenders were technicians rather than soldiers. When faced with determined rebels led by Tarn, they quickly surrendered. Jace found the main control panel, and drawing on skills learned from years of repair work, quickly determined how to override the lockouts Koresh had implemented. "Ready to broadcast," he announced. "Wait," Tarn said, studying a security monitor. "Koresh isn't in the throne room. He's heading for the landing bay trying to escape." Jace activated the palace communication system. "Eris Koresh is running. He's heading for the landing bay on level 73. "I'm closer," Eris's voice came back. "Converge there." Jace and Tarn raced through the palace corridors, fighting past the few remaining loyal guards. By the time they reached the landing bay, a confrontation was already underway. Aris stood at one end of the vast chamber, surrounded by her supporters. At the other, Karish waited beside his personal shuttle, a dozen elite guards forming a protective perimeter around him. "It's over, Karish," Eris called out, her voice echoing in the cavernous space. "Surrender, and you'll receive a fair trial." Karish laughed, a brittle sound devoid of humor. "Fair, after what I've done. We both know there's only one sentence possible." His hand tightened around the ceremonial blade at his side. "I prefer to die fighting." "Then you'll have your wish," Tarn growled, stepping forward with his weapon raised. But Eris held up a hand, stopping him. "No, this must end with justice, not vengeance." She approached Karish, stopping just beyond the reach of his blade. 15 years ago, you betrayed everything my father built. You turned an empire of knowledge into one of fear. Why? Because knowledge is wasted on the masses, Karish spat. Your father's vision was weak. The strong should rule, not serve. And are you strong, Karish? Eris asked softly. Strong men don't need to murder children in their beds as you tried to do with me. For the first time, uncertainty flickered across Karish's face. How did you escape? I saw the royal quarters burn. A loyal servant gave his life to save mine. Something you would never understand, the power of true loyalty, freely given. As they spoke, Jace noticed the thread of light between him and Eris pulsing more intensely. It was reacting to the confrontation, to the moment of truth unfolding before them. Suddenly, inspiration struck. The broadcast center was linked to the entire Imperial network, but so was the landing bay's communication system. It was designed to coordinate ship traffic across the planet. While attention was focused on the standoff, Jace slipped to a control panel and began working. Within moments, he had patched into the system, broadcasting the confrontation to every screen in the Empire. You speak of loyalty, Karish was saying, unaware of the broadcast, but your rebels are destroying the order I built. Order built on fear isn't order at all, Eris replied. It's just terror waiting to collapse. Karish's expression darkened. Enough philosophy. If I'm to die today, I'll take you with me. He lunged forward, blade flashing. Eris moved with unexpected grace, sidestepping the attack. The thread of light between her and Jace flared brilliantly, momentarily blinding Karish. In that instant of distraction, Eris claimed the advantage. Not with a weapon, but with words that rang out across the galaxy. I am Eris Veltra, rightful Empress of the Crystal Throne. I call upon the elite guard to remember their true oath, not to a man, but to justice. The guards surrounding Karish hesitated, looking at each other uncertainly. Sensing his support wavering, Karish made a desperate move. He grabbed a fallen guard's weapon and fired at Eris. The energy bolt never reached her. Jace, following the pull of the thread of light, had already moved into position. He dove forward, pushing Eris aside. The bolt grazed his shoulder, sending him sprawling. Jace, Eris cried out, rushing to his side. Karish seized the moment to make a break for his shuttle, but the elite guards, having seen his willingness to assassinate the true Empress, finally turned against him. They surrounded him, weapons raised. Drop your weapon, their commander ordered. It's over. Karish looked around wildly, seeing his last chance at escape vanish. With a howl of rage, he charged the nearest guard, only to be met with a stun blast that dropped him unconscious to the floor. Are you all right? Eris asked Jace, helping him to his feet. Just a scratch, he assured her, though his shoulder burned like fire. Did we win? Eris looked around the landing bay. The remaining guards had knelt, acknowledging her authority. Beyond, through the massive viewports, they could see the city below, lights blazing in celebration as news of Karish's capture spread. Yes, she said, a smile of relief breaking across her face. We won. The days that followed were a whirlwind of activity. Karish was tried publicly with evidence from the Crystal Throne, leaving no doubt of his guilt. He was sentenced not to death. Aris had abolished capital punishment as her first act, but to lifetime imprisonment in the same remote facilities where he had sent so many political prisoners. The Empire began the long process of healing. Eris returned to the Crystal Throne, using its connection to the Imperial network to address the concerns of citizens across thousands of worlds. Corrupt officials were removed, oppressive policies reversed, and relationships with marginalized species, particularly humans, were actively repaired. Jace remained by her side through it all, the thread of light between them a permanent reminder of their connection. As Eris's first official act as Empress, she named him Royal Witness, a new position that gave him authority to speak for those without power in imperial society. 1 month after Koresh's capture, a ceremony was held in the Grand Plaza before the Imperial Palace. Citizens from across the galaxy gathered to witness the formal coronation of Empress Aris Veltra. As part of the ceremony, Jace stood beside the throne, the thread of light between them visible to all, as a symbol of the new covenant between ruler and ruled. "The Empire exists to serve, not to control," Aris proclaimed. "Knowledge shall be our foundation, compassion our guide, and justice our purpose." The crowd erupted in cheers as she placed the crown upon her head, not the ostentatious headdress Koresh had worn, but the simple circlet that had been in her family for generations, now glowing with renewed purpose. After the ceremony, as the celebrations continued throughout the city, Eris and Jace stood on a balcony overlooking the plaza. "Did you ever imagine this?" Jace asked, gesturing to the revelry below. "When you were disguised as a beggar, did you think it would lead here?" Aris smiled, touching the thread of light that still connected them. "I hoped, but I had almost given up. 15 years is a long time to maintain faith. What made you approach me that day? There must have been thousands of people you could have tested." "You were the first in all that time to help simply because it was right," she replied. "Not for reward, not for recognition, even knowing it would cost you your meal." Jace shook his head. "A small price to pay considering the outcome." "A momentous one," Aris corrected. "That small act of kindness toppled an empire and restored a throne." Below in the plaza, workers were unveiling a new monument, a statue depicting a simple human offering food to a hooded figure. Beneath it, an inscription read, "The moment humanity awoke." "They're calling it the beginning of a new age," Jace said, watching the crowd gather around the monument. "And so it is," Eris agreed. "Not because of my return or Koresh's fall, but because one person chose kindness when cruelty would have been easier." She took his hand, the thread of light between them pulsing warmly. That is how galaxies are truly transformed, Jace one compassionate act at a time. As night fell over Varick 9, the stars emerged above the city, no longer distant and cold, but beacons of possibility in a galaxy reborn.